Hey everyone, this is Jennifer Beamer, owner-operator of Expertly Dyed Art by Science, and today we're going to continue on by talking about fiber processing. So you've bought your fleece, right? And you followed my guidelines more or less in my last few videos. Perfect, so you've got a great fleece. Now what do you do with it? Well, you have one of two options. You can wash it or you can leave it unwashed. Okay, why would you want to leave it unwashed? Well, if you are a weaver, you might want to leave it unwashed so that the lanolin that's naturally in the fleece can act as a barrier against friction and abrasion if you use it as a warp thread. It's going to keep it from pilling, it's going to keep it from basically falling apart under all that tension. So in the end, when you wash your finished textile, you have washed the fleece, essentially way after. And this is pretty normal. Another reason, felters. So if you're going to be using an entire fleece to make one of those really cool floor rugs or seat covers, you might want to leave your fleece unwashed so that through the felting process you're going to wash it anyway. That's great, right? Killing two birds with one stone. If you're a knitter, you might want to felt a hat or some booties or anything. You might want to spin it, knit whatever you're going to knit, and then when you do your felting process you'll wash it all at the same time. So those are a few reasons why you might want to leave your fleece unwashed and then just spin it in the grease. However, a lot of other people will want to wash the fleece, and especially if it's a very dirty fleece, you might encounter some major problems if you try to spin it in the grease. So washing it would be the best option. So though my fleece is washed already, I did want to talk a little bit about how to wash a fleece because I have a lot of experience washing fleeces, and I don't want you guys to make some of the same mistakes I have, because learning from mistakes is great except for when they're painful and expensive. There's a little bit of, if you do a little bit of research, these problems won't happen, but the information isn't always easily attainable, so hopefully this video will make you have fewer mistakes. Alright, so one of the things you're going to need for this is a large garment bag. So this one will hold about 2 or 3 sweaters, and I wear a size medium sweater, so you can kind of use that as a gauge. And if you want, you can get several of these. So what you're going to want to do is put your fleece in the bag and then wash it while it's in the bag. And I'll explain why you would want to wash it in the bag later. But first I want to talk about how much you should put in here. If you have a really clean fleece, you could probably put more in than you might otherwise. If you have a very dirty fleece, you might want to put less in than you might otherwise. This is a little bit based on your personal fleece. So every fleece is a little bit different because every sheep is a little bit different. So, and it's also across different breeds. Some breeds you might be able to pack it more full, and other ones you might not be able to. So it depends on the breed. It depends on how clean and dirty it is, and a little bit of that is going to be up to you. But a general guideline that I like to follow, I split the wools into the long wools and the fine wools. So if you have a long wool, anything like Teeswater, Wensleydale, Lincoln, or Leicester, you'll want to put less in the bag than you would otherwise. The reason being is they have a very tight lock structure, so you want to give more opportunities for the water to get in there and then have it do its business, getting the dirt out and extra vegetable matter and that sort of thing. So that's what I would recommend for the long wools. If you have a short wool fleece, you might want to put a little bit more in there because the lock structure isn't as super tight and curly as it would be for the long wool. And because of that, you can put a little bit more in because there's already a lot of space in between each fiber so that the dirt can come off without it being super tightly compressed in those curls. Like I said, that in conjunction with how clean or dirty the fleece is going to determine how much you put in the fleece bag. Now when you put the fleece in the bag, make sure you try to lay this flat, right, like this, so that when you're filling it, you're not just shoving it all at the bottom. You want to see how it's going to look flat. Then when you put it into your bath water, you'll be able to see that this bag isn't over full. Now let's talk briefly about the water. This is a really great opportunity for those of you who collect rainwater to use this on this project, because you could use this dirty water to then, water your flower beds, because more or less this is just dirt that's going to go back into the soil anyway. So take your rainwater or just cold water from the tap, and you're going to fill up a basin depending on your situation. Maybe it's a bathtub, maybe it's just like an outdoor like giant barrel thing. You want to fill it up with cold water, not hot water, cold water. This is going to be a soak. If you have a particularly dirty fleece, you're going to want to do this twice, at least twice, but most of the time twice is enough. If you have a particularly clean fleece, it's either well skirted or it was coated or both, you'll only have to probably do this once. If you have an extremely dirty fleece, what I have done in the past is I will do a cold soak in the morning for about 12 hours, and then I will do it again at night. If I already have a pretty clean fleece, I'll just do it at night. But basically, you want your fleece to sit in cold water for about 12 hours or overnight-ish. So you have your bag full of fiber, but not too full, and you're going to fill up your basin, and then you're going to set this down on top, and then you're just going to gently push straight down. You want some water to be underneath the fleece, because what's going to happen is as the dirt kind of gets wet, it will fall off the fiber, and you don't want it to reaccumulate on the fiber that's below. So you want to have, I don't know, maybe an inch or more, or depends on how dirty your fleece is, like I said. You just want some space under the fiber for that dirt to go. All right? Also, if this is outside, make sure you kind of cover it with something, because you don't want other stray vegetable matter getting in there. If it's raining, you don't want rainwater to semi-felt your wool during the night. You also don't want wild animals getting into it, so just cover it with something to protect it. And if you're doing this in your bathtub, hopefully everyone has taken their shower by then. So just submerge it in here. And now this is the important part for why you're putting it in the mesh bag. You just gently lift up on the mesh bag. You can either do you can grab the four corners and pull it up like this, or you can do like this. There's various ways you can pull this up, but the point is you want to pull it all up and let it just drip for a little while. I usually have a hook in my bathroom where I can just let it drip down into the bathtub, and I'll let that sit like that for about 10 minutes. Now, if I'm doing this twice, I will do this process and then repeat. So if I've done it in the morning, in the evening, I'll take the bag out, let it drip, rinse out my basin, refill it with cold water, and after about 10 minutes, I'll reorganize the fiber in the bag so that it lays flat, and then I'll put it back in the cold water to let it sit again, and then I'll do that process of hanging it up after it's dry. Now, the reason why you want to do that is because you don't want to move the fiber around a lot, and this will also help maintain the lock structure of your fleece. So if you have a long wool, for example, and you want to do like tailspin locks or something like that, this will help keep those locks pretty much in order, so that you don't have to seriously hunt for them, or you had this beautiful fleece of beautiful locks, and now because of the washing process they're all just jumbled up. So this will help keep the lock structure nice and neat for you. And if you're going to be doing kind of like combing, like you're going to comb your merino, same thing. It'll help keep the lock structure fairly organized, so that when you get to the combing part, the combing will be so much easier and so much faster to get through if you do it in a mesh bag like this. Now let's talk about actually the washing part. So we got all of the dirt off, we got most of the vegetable matter out that was pretty much loose. Now we're going to get rid of some of the lanolin. Now it's important to keep the temperature of your water anywhere between 200 and 210 degrees Fahrenheit. You don't want it to boil, because boiling would be too hot, and you don't want it to be much colder than that, because I think it's anything below 180 degrees, the lanolin will come off and then re-adhere to something. So you want to get the lanolin off, you don't want to move it around, right? So you want to keep it at a certain temperature for at least 10 minutes. That is appropriate if you're starting at 210 degrees. It'll cool down a little bit, but within that 10 minutes it's still going to be very, very, very hot. Now, there are various different kinds of detergents that you can use out there. In the past, I have used the same detergents that I would use for my delicates, and I actually can't remember the name brands that I used because that was like 2 years ago. But anything that you would use on your delicates in terms of detergent is fine to use, especially if you're going to be using that detergent to wash everything. However, there's also a lot of other really great alternatives. There's a unicorn scour, which is specifically designed for hand wash delicates made of wool. So you can use that, or you can even use synthropol, which is a wetting agent for professional dyers will use this to wet out fiber so that when they dye, the fiber comes out more evenly because it's removed all of those excess oils. So those are a couple of different ways that you can wash. You can also just use regular Dawn soap. The point is you want to get the lanolin off. Now, depending on how oily the fleece is, for a long wool you might only have to do this once. Usually I find that twice is best. For a fine fleece with a lot of oil, you'll probably have to do this at least twice, if not 3 times. And I've been in both camps. Really just depends on the fleece. So after the first wash for the long wool, check a lock, like just take some out, rinse it off, put it between a couple paper towels, let it dry, and see how oily it feels. This sampling only takes like a minute or two, so it's not like it's not like you're just leaving it for an hour or anything. You're just doing a quick check. And most of the time I've been able to determine from this quick lock check to see if I need to wash it again or not. The important thing is you don't, in my opinion, you don't want to remove all of the lanolin. The lanolin is really great for spinning, and it's really great for making a nice smooth yarn. And you're probably going to wash it again anyway after you've spun the yarn. So I feel that the lanolin is there to help a little bit, and it helps cut down on static electricity. So if it is particularly dry fleece, you'll only have to wash it once or twice if you're dealing with a fine wool. If it's a particularly oily wool, you can make a decision whether or not to wash it yet again. The point is you don't want to remove so much of that lanolin that the fleece becomes dry and brittle. The point of the lanolin is to protect the fleece, or to protect the fiber itself. So if you're removing 100% of it, it's going to be a very dry, not very good fleece in the end. So you want to keep a little bit of the lanolin on there, and that's going to be slightly subjective on your part, but hopefully with this little test, taking a lock out after the first, or in the fine wool, the second wash, and just seeing how oily it feels. If it feels, you know, mostly clean, then I would stop. But then again, it's your preference, so you can decide what you want to do with that. Anyway, and then you will do rinse water and then hang it to dry. Throughout this entire washing process, you're going to keep it at hot temperatures the entire time. The only time that you will not is in the final rinse. Okay? What I usually do is in the final rinse, I will let it just sit in the water until it gets to about room temperature. That can take about 4 to 6 hours depending on how hot it was in the beginning, but usually about 4 to 6 hours for it to cool to that temperature. And that is the temperature I feel most comfortable manipulating my wool at, because if it's too hot, you can actually start to felt it in the bag even without water, or even without soap. So you'll want to be very careful with how you're manipulating it. Okay, so when that's done, you let it hang to dry, and then there's a couple ways you can dry it. You can dry it out on a board, like a board with a screen on the bottom so that air gets underneath and above. Or another thing that I've tried doing, that I have actually done, you take the mesh bag that you used to wash the fleece in. You just lay it down on top of a drying rack, like the one that you dry normal clothes on. You put it on there, and then you can just put the fleece on there to let it dry. Great. Some other ways that I've used to get a lot of the water out, you can use towels. You can use like a vegetable spinner, like the salad spinner thing. You can use that. Or if you have a a spin cycle on your washing machine that does not dispense water during that spin cycle. I know a lot of newer models will do that anyway. If yours does not have rinse water that comes in during that cycle, you can spin out the extra in the washing machine. I've also done this, and the fleece dries in literally a day. So those are a couple ways that you can get it dry. But really, it's a fleece. It's going to take some time. Something that I like to do to help facilitate the speed in which it dries is I will take the fleece after about 12 hours and flip the whole thing over, because the water will go down into the fleece and then it just accumulates in the bottom, right? But by flipping it back and forth every so many hours, what it does is it takes the water through the fleece again, and then there's all that extra surface area for the water to evaporate out. So, and if you have a particularly warm room in your house, this is actually really great because warm air can hold more moisture than cold air. So all of that moisture gets caught up into the air, so it dries a little bit faster. Also, same thing in the winter. If it's really dry in your house, it's going to get sucked up out of the fleece in no time. Anyway, so that is basically the first stage of the fiber processing, washing the fleece. And then in the next video, we are going to talk about actually storing the clean fleece and picking open locks to prepare for spinning. All right, see you in the next video. Bye.